Welcome to Accelerate OC, the only show focused on the people leading innovation in Orange County. Join our host, Kerry Ransom, in his conversations with the trendsetters, entrepreneurs, investors, and leaders here, because it's time to Accelerate OC.
Good morning. Welcome to Accelerate OC. I'm Kerry Ransom, and thanks always to my engineer, Paul, for making me and my guests sound so good. Today's episode is sponsored by Collective Genius and my friend Jeff Martin, who runs that, and particularly want to draw attention to his program for venture-backed and high-growth companies called Peak Planning. We're in the fourth quarter now, and a lot of companies are planning for 2020 and what's ahead for them, and often they will try to go off-site with their leadership team and do some planning for the year ahead. And Jeff has a great program to facilitate that called Peak Planning, where he will help get that leadership team aligned on a 3-year vision, a 1-year plan, quarterly goals, and all the tools to stay on track. And so if you're interested in having someone like Jeff to facilitate, hit me up and I'm happy to make the introduction. I am really excited to bring Peter Nguyen on here today. And before we get to hear about Peter and all his business endeavors, and I think many that aren't even publicly known, he has an amazing background, but I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to Peter, and then we'll quickly hear from him. So he is currently the founder and CEO of a company here called Adexchange Group, which is based in Irvine, and it is the leading direct-to-consumer digital performance-based agency. And he reached $100 million in revenue in this agency in less than 2 years after he launched it, which is an incredible feat, and we're definitely going to dig in around how he did that. He's received a ton of awards for his work as both an entrepreneur and for this company due to the growth, due to his clear prowess as an entrepreneur. And he's been given accolades by magazines such as Inc. and Entrepreneur Magazine. He also won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and also received a local award from the Orange County Business Journal for excellence in entrepreneurship. He has some other companies as well. He is the co-founder of a really successful company called Chargeback 360 that we were just talking about. He's also the CEO and founder of a company called Push Innovation that does logistics and provides other services to direct-to-consumer brands, and that's an area that he just has a tremendous background in. Push, as an example, has 100 employees and ships over 100 or tens of thousands at least of products every single day for other companies. I'm going to say that Peter was born an entrepreneur, and he started a web design firm and development firm while he was still in college in Florida. Just learned that he moved out here, and I'll let him tell us why he moved out here originally, but we're really glad that he stuck around. As I've mentioned, he started a number of different businesses, including one that is an educational business that he provides to help others start their own product and service businesses online. He's been here in Orange County for about 10 years, but he's done business all over the world. So I'm going to definitely ask him about how he compares and contrasts business in Orange County versus other places that he's been or done business. Peter, it's really great to have you here.
Great to be here, Kerry. I'm really excited to have a fun time today.
Great. Yeah. Well, let's get to the starting line. So I mentioned Adexchange Group. Introduce the audience to the business and how you decided to start it.
Yeah, so I've actually been an entrepreneur now going on, I think, 18, 19 years. Wow. As a freshman in college. And so I've always been on the digital side. At first, launching my own products. I was lucky enough to be kind of at the right kind of time frame where the websites and the internet and early stages of marketing was developed, and I was kind of always on the kind of that forefront and always paid a close attention to that. I've had pretty moderate success in my early days, made a lot of the mistakes early on, and learned really, really quickly kind of how to navigate that. And in 2008, the direct-to-consumer market just started to boom. I was one of the first original 12 what we call advertisers. An advertiser is a product owner, and I was one of the first original dozen, people call, OGs, founding father, of the space. And I was on the advertiser side, and I took a $7,000 investment. That's all I had at the time. It was $1,000 of cash and 6,000 on a Amex, and to start my first campaign. It was a teeth whitening product. I was in Florida at the time, and I just started dating my now wife, and she lived in California. I was ready to leave anyways, leave Florida. I lived in Florida for 20 years, and I was like, it was time for me to move out. I was either going to move to Texas or California. And then when I met my wife, I was like, okay, California it is. She was living in Orange County at the time. She lived in LA prior. And so, she gave me an ultimatum, funny enough. She says, if you don't move out here by the end of the year, it's over. And I was like, okay. Well, I was pretty serious. I was like, okay, I better find a way to, move out. And I was in the direct-to-consumer space, and so fortunately transplanting and, I can work out of my own, computer, give me a laptop and a Starbucks, and I'm fine. So I created this first campaign. I gave myself, 6 weeks to launch this campaign. And keep in mind, I was in the industry for about 6 months prior, and this is my first one I was going to do on my own, with a partner at the time. And so we took this $7,000, and I said I gave myself 6 weeks to launch this. I went to this other digital agency, and I said, what product do you want? And they said, we need a teeth whitening product. I said, okay, I'll launch that. I took that $7,000, and then 6 months after launch, 6 weeks after we launched that, less than 2.5 months, we ended up doing $2.1 million in revenue. And I've since then have done dozens of campaigns similar to that, and became kind of a thought leader. I created a course that taught people how to actually do this. Baylor University picked up that course within months of me launching the course. 9 semesters deep in that course. Baylor's the second-ranked entrepreneurship program in the country by Princeton Review, and our course is the highest-rated course in the history of Baylor. And so the course was 500-page textbook and 20 DVDs long, and so a lot of people consider me one of the godfathers in direct-to-consumer advertising, and a lot of my students have became many dozens, if not many more, have became very, very successful. And the existing advertisers in this space, a lot of them are transplants or students of mine, or learn from the students of mine. So over that period of time, myself being an advertiser, launching dozens of campaigns, doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, then I started in 2013, came up with the idea to say, you know what, I was already working, I was a client of all the service providers in the space, and I knew all the big ones, and I also saw what they were missing. And so I said I had an opportunity. I co-founded it with the 2 other guys, and we launched Adexchange, and we want to do things a lot differently. And so just like with any business I start, I don't like starting another N1. Like, to me, that's just not fun, and it's not interesting, and it's not long lasting. So I always try to find the holes, the pain points, the thing that people are missing, and how can we do it better? How can we be the best? I don't really focus too much about competitors. A lot of, I think there's a saying is like, if you focus on, like, losers focus on winners and winners focus on winning, right? And that's always kind of been my mentality is I just focus on being my best, and our companies being our best, and that's all we really focus on. And we do pay attention to some competitors, just as far as what they're doing, so how to navigate it even a little better. But we don't really focus on, we want competition is good. I want my competitors to win because it makes us better, and it provides other options. And so, we found a void. Adex, to my surprise, I wish, a lot of people can say, oh yeah, we had this plan to do $100 million in under 20 months, and no, we didn't. I mean, I was happy to do $10 million in 20 months, and it grew a lot faster. I think, one thing that most people kind of forget, and people, is like, I was in the industry for many years prior, built a name prior, and if that didn't happen, I don't think Adex would have had the growth, I mean? So I already had a built-in reputation, and reputation is so important in any industry you're going to get into.
right.
And the longer you've had it, the more trust you can build. And so when we became a service provider, I was already a thought leader, authority. And so, you know, both the media buyers, affiliates, and the advertisers all kind of, a lot of them knew who I was. And so they're like, oh, Peter's going to do this, and it's probably going to be a little bit better. And so I'm going to give it a try. And then when they try, they're like, oh, wow, you know, we outperformed all our competitors. And it quickly, you know, spread really, really quickly. So that's I would say the key is, like, you know, the roots of a lot of it is the reputation that you built on the trust, you know, with the industry.
Sure. Well, and that, I would guess, that got you the trial, as you were saying, from a lot of people. What I would guess a lot of the audience doesn't fully realize is, in a performance agency like this, that you have the potential to grow really fast because your clients are going to push the boundaries and grow as fast as they possibly can, assuming the numbers work. Wherein more a traditional agency, they probably have more of an annual budgeting process. They're only going to allocate what they've already pre-committed, where you're most likely, I'm just speculating, but most likely working with more entrepreneurial folks that will reinvest every dollar or close to right back into it, assuming you're growing and the numbers all work.
That's exactly it. And that's the reason why I chose performance, is because, you know, being on the other side, you know, at the end of the day, you watch any Shark Tank episode any given week, any, you know, or any VC you're talking about, they're going to, first thing they're going to say is, what's your cost per acquisition? Like, that's the key word, and performance is all about that. And so, you know, part of our monster growth is because when you know the long-term value of a customer, let's just say, you know, a typical customer of ours has $120, $130 long-term value, and we're only charging our customers $40, $45 cost per acquisition. And so which advertiser would not say, okay, well, when you have built-in margin like that, give me as many sales as possible, instead of working on a 10 grand a month budget, which you have to get client by client by client. So typically we have less clients than a typical agency, but we have guys who want to, again, push the boundary, reinvest their money, and because they have built-in margin. And so we all of our customers, you know, we keep the advertiser in mind, myself being a former advertiser, saying, wait a second, you know, like, I need to be profitable as an advertiser, and it needs to be win-win. And so we push our boundaries in that way, and we have our built-in margins, you know, being the network in between and the agency in between, that we have our built-in margins. So it's worked, it's scaled, and it's been a fun ride.
Very good. Well, a couple other questions around Adex. So how have you dealt with, I mean, we talked about, you know, you've primarily been digital native since you really got into this world. The channels, the audience has continued to move. It will fracture, then it will consolidate. You've got these giant monopolistic platforms right now like Google and Facebook that tend to control a lot of the audience access, which in many cases seems like it's going to be a very competitive market, and your ability to scale while you have a scale audience, the competitive pressures might compress down your scalability. How have you navigated through that? Because clearly you're still finding success, but it seems like every time there's a new opportunity, people rush in as fast as they can.
Right. What most people don't realize about our industry, the direct-to-consumer industry, is that, you know, most of Google's success early on came from our industry. We were driving the cost per clicks, you know, for Google the first several years, and then eventually they try to get the bigger brands in who are later, you know, slower to move and all that stuff, and then they try to sometimes push out our industry, I would say, in some regards. You know, they're like, you know, thanks, but no thanks, you know. Same thing happened to Facebook. Like, when all the, you know, people were buying at Facebook in the beginning, they were small businesses who didn't know, who were really, you know, $10 a day budgets. You know, the big brands kind of came in a little earlier than Google did, but they still weren't, you know, that was a really small part of their budget. And then there was our industries who were paying 30, 50, 70, you know, $1 per click. And so when we're such performance driven in math, and everything is in math, we can push the limits as far as, because everything matters with conversions, earnings per clicks, and cost per clicks, and, you know, there's margins built in. And so, you know, so we don't really, you know, as new platforms exist, we're usually the first ones to test it out. We're the first ones to grow it.
Sure.
People don't realize that, and so the monopolistic, where there's ad networks or display, our industry is using all of the above. We use the social, from Facebook and Instagram. We definitely use Google display. Native's evolving, and we're evolving with it. And even email. So like those are the 5 major sources of traffic that we use. Almost everything we do is paid media. We don't do SEO. We don't do Amazon. We don't do marketplaces. We use paid media and for our advertisers on their own websites.
That's great. So one word I haven't heard you mention is mobile. And we were talking a little bit before about you've primarily worked with brands that have physical products versus digital, and clearly in the mobile world we've gotten heavily into an app-based marketing model, largely digital product. Have you found opportunities in mobile?
In 2013, actually mobile was the thing that helped really launch Adex where we're at, because none of my competitors were focusing on mobile responsive pages.
Yes.
And so they would use the same desktop pages, and you would squeeze in that little mobile, and we made all of our pages mobile responsive, and our mobile conversions like doubled all our competitors, and we focused on that, and 72% of all of our transactions are on a mobile device. So we've always been that way, and unfortunately, as the consumer gets more and more comfortable buying on a phone, which they clearly have, it's helped our business. And so a recommendation, whether you have a small business or a large business, is like make sure your pages are mobile responsive. We have iPad responsive. We do the heat test and all that stuff, and conversions is key.
And so you're definitely accessing mobile traffic on Facebook and Instagram and Google.
That's the majority of it.
Yeah,
it's probably this past year. It's probably closer to 80+%.
Yeah, that totally is. But you're getting it through those. That totally makes sense. So, what's the coolest product that you've seen in the last 12 months, either that you're working with as a client or that you've just seen out there and gone, oh, that's amazing?
To pick one of them, I have some of the best brands that we work with as clients. We work a lot largely in health and beauty space, so we see a lot of these kind of innovative things. The first one I could think in mind is there's just one brand we just brought on this year, and they have this time release capsule where all of a sudden you take one pill, and then all of a sudden instantly you'll have this main ingredient, but then 2 hours later it releases this other main ingredient, and then 6 hours later it releases this other ingredient. And so they have an energy one where they give the steady energy throughout. And they also have this amazing sleep one they're working on, where it has the melatonin, and then it has like the GABA that stay asleep, and then it has even a form of caffeine and then that 6th and 7th hour, so when you're waking up, like, you're already energized. And so it's really cool technology. I'm excited to launch that product with them, that we're gonna launch pretty soon.
Very cool. Very cool. So some interesting time release capabilities. That sounds like a great one for a marketer. As well.
Exactly.
So you've started a number of different businesses here. You alluded to how you like to look for that unique need or unmet need that you see in the market. How do you decide? Is it just that, or are there other decisions that you tend to factor in to help you decide whether to start a business or not start a business?
They're definitely kind of a matrix that I go through. I'm very mathematical, and so I actually put it in a matrix these days because I have like new opportunities come every week, So it's just like, again, I can't say yes to all of them. So I'll say no 9 times before I say yes to one. And part of my decision-making process, part of that matrix, one of them is it fun? Like, I'm at the point where, large part of my success isn't about, how much money we're making, but it's like, am I having fun doing it? Is it challenging enough? Because that's a big part of it, like I want to, part of growth is that challenge. And so is it fun? Is it challenging? That's part of it. Obviously, do I have enough time to commit to it? Do I have the right team? It starts with partners. Partners is everything, and starting as many companies as I've had, I've had good and bad partners, and I'll be honest with you, and some of it, and so I've learned from that, and there's no magic formula. Like every successful, I know a dozen billionaires and super ultra successful people, and they all still make mistakes even in their 70s, and so part of it is picking the right partners and then picking the right teams to lead it, and that's all part of the core components of it. And then for me, these days is just like, is this scalable? Because for me to do, I'll spend the same amount of time building $1 million company than $1 billion company, right? And so if I'm going to put the same effort, and do I have the core competence to be competitive? Like, I like learning new industries because it makes the other industries I'm in better, because I'm looking at new perspective. And so for me, and then I clearly go and I go in the cave and say, how can I make this, the best? And how in 5 or 10 years can this still withstand, the ever evolving industries, and and will this still last and still be the best? So I do take the time to really do that. And until I have the big aha and those genius level moments of saying this is going to be special these days, and I would say when I was younger, I didn't have that, maybe sometimes that foresight. You just go and just go do, and then learn and break things along the way. But now I would say for me, I'm a little more thoughtful. I want to do things more meaningful. And to me, and that's the last part, is like, when you're younger, you'll just sell whatever that sells. And now, I'm in my mid 30s. I'm saying, okay, even though maybe I'm still young for my age, but I'm really thinking about what's meaningful for this world, for this planet, what can do good, and that's a big part of it for me too.
That's awesome. Well, you're going right into some other questions that I wanted. So let's go under the hood just a little bit more around that. And I don't think we've talked about this, but I came from a multi-generational family business, and it lasted almost 150 years.
Wow.
In my family. And so I have this really long view that I tend to take to things. But the world, certainly the digital world, where I've spent a lot of my time as well, pace of change is just so radically different. And so I think as we look ahead, I tend to look and assume that the cycle times are going to increasingly shorten. So as you think about future opportunities and the change that you see in the direct-to-consumer digital marketing space, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly thinking about that. I'm constantly trying to stay ahead of the curve, really thinking about what's the new form of commerce, what's the customer wanting. At the end of the day, without our customers, not even our clients, the customers, the end user buying it, like without that, as that's evolving, then, we don't exist. And so for me, having the foresight, like I stay on top of things. I don't know if you know who Peter Diamandis. I joined his Abundance 360 program because just so I can stay on top of what's happening, AR, VR, health, longevity, all the energy and all those things. And so to me is like being in the forefront of what's new and what's fresh keeps me, and that's part of the fun and the challenge for me. So I don't fear it. I know all the experience I've had in this world only makes entering whatever's new to come, I can take that same principles, because it's all the same principles of buying, principles of what makes people buy, and taking that and evolving that with whatever the medium is.
So you talked about how there's sort of the same amount of effort to build a huge company versus a small company. Have you thought through, I mean, you've had success over and over and over building bigger companies really quickly. That's a skill. There are not that many people, and I'm sure you've met a lot of people that have built small businesses. How do you think about what it is that you have that's allowed you to do that repeatedly, where others maybe can't get past that first million or a few million?
I mean, that first $1 is like the hardest, and that first million is the next hardest, and then you come to a certain point where, like, it took me almost 10 years to get that first real million. You know what I mean? So it's just like people forget about that. It's just like and I think, grit is very, very important. I think your mentality, right, your attitude towards entrepreneurship is so, so key. And so, like, I don't like. I'm the type of person who doesn't like doing the same thing over and over every single day. I'm constantly like trying it, breaking it. Everything is my playground. Everything is my test lab, and I don't have such a strong, you know, attachment towards, oh shoot, you know, my idea is the best idea, and let's, you know, like, no, I will, that idea comes up, I'm going to test it real quick. If it doesn't work, move on to the next one. So I treat everything like that. You know, you fail fast, and you'll find eventually, if you fail enough times, which I can probably guarantee that I probably failed way more than most people have their entire lives, you know.
Yes.
You know, and so
Doing what you do, that's that's part of it.
But the beauty of it is, like, I don't think of it as failure, right? It's just a test, and 100% of the time you'll get a result, and as long as you keep on doing that fast and learning quickly. So I think that's part of it. Is like, it's not, there's no magic formula. It's just like, but for me, if you're talking about scaling a company, I think more importantly, I look for things that are mass market, because then you have a wider audience, right? And so that's why I'm in the health and beauty space. That's why I'm in certain spaces, because, you know, I'm in the energy space, I'm in some of the green space, I'm in the crypto space. Like, those are mass market solutions out there that the world is evolving into, and certain technologies, and that's what matters to me. And so, you know, if you want to be in a niche space, and that's fine, start off with that and build some experience and confidence, and I think more importantly, learn how to market, because every entrepreneur, they're outsourcing their marketing, which is great. I mean, it's good for my business, right? Sure. But at the end of the day, I learned early on as entrepreneurs, like, if I don't know how to sell or market, I'm not really much of an entrepreneur, because if you don't know those principles and to do that, that's the secret sauce.
Yeah, that is such a great lesson for the audience. So thank you for sharing that. I could not agree more on both, you know, testing, failing fast, and also just knowing that core element of your craft. I've shared the story, I don't know if I have on here before, but one of the first startups that I was involved with was while I was in school, and I was writing Google ads all day long in the middle of class, and I would literally ask my classmates next to me to give me headlines, because I said, I just need more.
Exactly.
More is better as far as any test ideas.
Precisely.
I will take them. So I think we definitely share a lot of views there. So as you're scaling companies, you obviously have to scale the people and the teams. What have you learned from that, and you know, how to help people scale, or how to help them understand when they're being a bottleneck, so that you can scale your organizations?
So the first six years I moved here, you know, we've hired over 900 people, right? So across the various companies. And so it seems like a lot, and we did it one person at a time. I think it's so key. You know, I don't operate most of the day-to-day of any of the companies except Adexchange. And, you know, my partners run the day-to-day operations, and they're such good with people, managing people. That's such a key component. Hiring good people, building good cultures. You know, we've won a lot of awards. I think more importantly, what I'm more proud of, even besides, you know, Entrepreneur of the Year, or like, you know, is the best places to work, and the culture awards. We won a lot of those in our companies, and I'm most proud of that, because it's not just like we're the biggest and some of the best, but we're also have done it the right way with the right people. And so to me, that's what makes a company, and building a right culture that I would say cares with a capital C is very, very important. When every employee realizes that the guy at the top, or the founder or the CEO, truly cares about them, they're gonna want to work harder. They're gonna and I don't use fear-based tactics. I don't micromanage, you know. But we have to have players with great talent who also are here to work, but also know that, you know, there's something bigger than themselves, and align that vision.
That's great. Yeah, just so clear that you understand building companies is a team sport.
Absolutely.
And you know, as I've talked about previously, you know, the best teams tend to win, and so you create a culture of team and care and love like that, and you're gonna unlock people's best potential and capability, and they will.
Absolutely.
They'll do their best. That's awesome. So we haven't talked too much about Orange County. Accelerate OC is really focused on Orange County, which I've been here 15 years, and you've been here about 10. It's a great place, and we continue to have amazing entrepreneurs like you doing things here. What is it about Orange County that you most appreciate?
So when I first moved here, my wife told me that we can either live in San Diego, Orange County, LA, or the Bay Area, right? And so I literally visit all the places, and I visited prior when I lived in the East Coast, and I really gave every city, region a try. And very, very quickly within months, I was like, OC it is. And I think besides, the weather, and besides like less traffic,
Yes.
than maybe like congested LA, it was that sweet spot for me where it wasn't the craziness of LA and the hustle and bustle, which I appreciate. I like having LA in our backyard, so I'm there probably twice a month. I like having San Diego in our backyard. But San Diego is a little bit too relaxed for me, and OC was right in that mecca of like that small business in between, where the talent pool was good enough, the people were ambitious enough, and I think more importantly, like, you can build like the hearts of the people here. Our teams were definitely there, like, and I think they have a more pure aspect of it, and you get a lot of the Silicon Valley transplant who maybe originally comes down to LA for jobs, and then they make their way down. The people who are more family oriented and make their way down to OC, and then you get some really, really good talent. We've hired some amazing people in OC, and I don't think I could have built the business I built in almost any other city besides having OC. And so people are like, oh, is it you're not Silicon Valley? I was like, no, that's a huge benefit. Like, we don't have to pay Silicon Valley wages sometimes. That's a competitive advantage, and we can build and train some people. I don't have any issues training people because I'm a natural teacher, and so into new industries and making that happen. So for me, OC is, and besides, I mean, from a personal perspective of OC, when you're about an hour and a half away from going surfing, going skiing, going hiking anywhere, to like just about every single outdoor things or indoor things, like, you have it all. You're a food mecca. I mean, I'm a big foodie, and so, like, we have every type of food, within half an hour from where I live or work, and there's all big parts for me to make me, for me, I'd love to be in OC for the rest of my life. And I told my wife, my family, this is where, I live in Villa Park, so
Great spot.
one of the small city in OC, but I love it because it's quiet and it's exactly a great place to raise a family.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think you just said what a lot of folks who've been on here have said. This is a place where you can't have it all. So to just turn a little bit, there are always ways that we can improve. Part of why I started Accelerate OC is, after as much time as I've been here, I've had a lot of conversations with folks who've said, I'm not aware of all these really interesting things that I hear about, and who are the people that are making things happen here. And as you think about the things you feel like we could improve as a business community here, what would you say are the things you feel like we should be focusing on as a business community to support each other?
I think having more, accelerators, incubators, more focus even on, like, let's say, university settings. And UCI does a great job. Fullerton does a great job in these schools. We have a lot of alumni from there. And there's great accelerators here. And just more focus on attracting, supporting these new tech bubbles and these new initiatives in other industries to diversify. OC already has a really, really well diversified,
Yes.
Both professional sector, high tech sector already, but continue to. What I love to see also is for entrepreneurs to collaborate a little bit better.
Yes.
Like, I don't think we do that well enough. I don't think we know each other well enough. We see each other's on awards or some of these, charity events, but there's not enough things for us to see how we can collaborate and work together. And I'd love to see that more. We see that a little bit more in other cities. And I think the more that we get to share with one another, learn from one another, and collaborate with one another, I think it makes OC that much stronger.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why I so appreciate you coming on here. And we'll continue to work on making that happen as as a group. So I appreciate that. So, Peter, unfortunately, I'd love to continue this conversation. Peter, Paul's giving me the high sign over here, so we're going to have to wrap up for today. And so one of the things I always ask my guests as a final lap is to share a key lesson or piece of advice. You've shared a bunch already. This has just been a treasure trove of wisdom, and I greatly appreciate that. I know the audience will as well. But what's the last piece of advice or lesson you'd love to leave with our audience this morning?
I'm going to leave with two. I'll give you one little bonus.
Perfect.
Okay, so one important thing is to truly know thyself, right? So it's like, so for me, early on in my 20s, I realized that I was a math guy. I realized I liked the creative side of things. I loved the challenge. I liked solving big problems. And so, like, I knew myself well enough to say, okay, these industries, these sectors, it wasn't just about making money, but it was like knowing myself as to where would I thrive. And people kind of shortchange themselves, and I think either people think too highly of themselves, where they're a little delusioned, or don't think of themselves enough where they don't see their full potential. And I think when you find your sweet spot and truly know thyself, you'll find your sweet spot in life. I think, ability, affinity, opportunity, when those three matches, you're in your sweet spot in life. That's the first part. So be true to yourself, be authentic to yourself, and you'll find your spot as an entrepreneur. And the second thing is kind of a newer thing that I've been really thinking about a lot. I've been working out, more than I've ever. I'm probably in the best shape of my life.
That's awesome.
I had some good mentors and friends who've gotten there. And, one of my, my mentors, in the physical workout space, he's one of the biggest thought leaders. His name is Mike Chang. Recently he's told me, in order to build muscle, you have to have, increase your time under tension, right? And so it's just like the key of this is like, when you're pushing, 10 reps of your bench press or your push-ups or whatever, he says it's like the last two when you're struggling, you're barely doing that. He says that's when the real muscle gets built. The first 8 doesn't really build muscle. It's just easy going fast, right? So he says instead of doing 10 things, what you should do is you should do the whole time slow and time under tension. And the longer you have time under tension, the quicker your muscle will exponentially grow. And it doesn't just work that way. I was been thinking about the last couple of weeks. It doesn't work that way just in the physical body. It works that way in the mental. It works that way in the emotional. It works that way in the spiritual. And so all aspects of our body, the longer we have time under tension. And so what most people as entrepreneurs try to do is avoid failure, avoid the tension. And when you avoid the failure, you avoid success, like ultra success, because when you see that tension, most people are just like, that's why most people don't become entrepreneurs, because they fear that tension. They try to avoid it, dance around it. And so just like in your physical body, where when you feel that tension, what do? You push through that. And so to me, that's a part of grit. And so like the most successful people have the toughest minds right here. It's not the brilliant ideas. 'Cause you see all sorts of different IQs, all sorts of different levels of ability, and then you're like, this is what it all is like. So I've been through a lot. Part of my story is I've been through I had this crazy life. My father passed away right in front of me when I was 12 years old. I went through all these things in my early 20s of failures and all these things, and that time under tension for me helped accelerate, and I pushed right through it. I had the right mental fortitude. So now anything that I face, I have that muscle built in. And and remember that first time you do your first 10 push-ups, you could barely do it, or your first 2 pull-ups, and then after you keep doing time under tension, it's like, it's easy. It gets easier. So for me, doing almost 20 years as an entrepreneur now, who've faced it all, like, I'm not afraid of what's to come, because I've been under enough time under tension where we're like, okay, let's bring it on. Let's solve bigger problems. Let's face bigger challenges, and let's go.
That's awesome. Peter, thank you so much for taking us along on the ride today. This has been, I'm feeling like I got a good workout just from this conversation. So thank you so much. And, so much wisdom and experience shared. Thanks for just opening up and providing so much value to our audience. And it's clear you're doing your part to accelerate OC. Welcome to the family.
Thanks a lot, Kerry. Glad to be here. Thanks a lot.
You've just listened to Accelerate OC. Join our live recordings every Tuesday morning at accelerateoc.com, or listen, like, and share anytime from your favorite podcast spot. Let's accelerate OC together.